Hey guys, welcome back, and today we are going to be continuing my positional group rankings. We're going to be looking at the edge rushers today. Today we're going to be looking at the top 15 edge rushers in the 2024 NFL Draft. And this is a class that feels pretty top heavy at the edge rusher position, but I still think there are some quality players that could make really big impacts at the NFL level. Before we get into it, hit that like button, subscribe if you are new. Also, if you are new to this channel, sign up for Underdog Fantasy using my code JWAC to get double your initial deposits. I love their higher, lower games. Been doing a lot of that through March Madness and the NBA season. So if you guys are interested in that, be sure to use my code JWAC. You get double your initial deposit up to $100. And without further ado, let's get into the edge rushers. At number 15, we've got Xavier Thomas out of Clemson. I know this is a guy that some people are a little bit higher on. And I think you can look at the athletics and the athleticism that Thomas has, and the ceiling is high for him. He's got good height. He's got great length. On top of that, he's really quick. He has one of the quickest first steps off tape of any of these edge rushers in the class, and he showcases a number of pass rush moves with a spin, a swim, and up and under, different things like that. He knows how to leverage himself. He's got active hands. He knows how to get into the backfield and pressure the quarterback. He has dealt with injuries. He's had a couple of foot injuries, couple of leg injuries during his time at Clemson, and he's going to be 25 years old by the end of his rookie season. A bit of an older prospect, which for defensive linemen doesn't really worry me about age too much, but it is something to take into consideration. He's not a good run defender. It seems like he was neutralized in run defense quite a bit. And on top of that, he's not very strong. What he has in height and length, he is pretty light at the position, around 248 pounds. So that's something that can improve. And he plays with very high pads. For me, it was kind of a three-way tie between Xavier Thomas, Gabriel Murphy, and Jalen Green from James Madison. James Madison has some guys that I really like. I think Jalen Green is definitely one of them and one of the more underrated edge rushers in this class. But I like the athleticism of Xavier Thomas, and I think he has a higher ceiling than those guys because of the pass rush moves, because of the quickness. Reminds me of D Ford. I think he's going to be a rotational player at the next level. I don't think he's a full-time starter, but I think you could bring him in. He could be a pass rush specialist. I think that could be really good for whoever gets him. So Xavier Thomas is my number 15 edge rusher. At number 14, we have Austin Booker. I know a lot of people love Booker. This is just not a guy that I'm very high on. He's got good size. Another guy who's pretty light in the 240s, I believe. But, it's something to take into consideration. He's tall. He's got great length. Another guy with a really quick first step and a strong tackler. My biggest issues with him, he plays with high pads. He's inconsistent in his pass rush moves. Now, he showcases the ability to get to the quarterback, but we haven't seen it on a consistent enough basis for Booker. While I see it at times, a nice swim move, he hasn't really put it all together. And while I do think he has the upside to be a good pass rusher at the next level, is just a guy that we haven't seen it really come to fruition with. On top of that, he really only has 1 year of experience, and that was this past year at Kansas. He's still a very raw prospect, and I think it's going to take him a little bit of time. I think there's some guys that I have ahead of him that are going to be taken later than him because a lot of people love the upside of Austin Booker. Now, the combine numbers were concerning because if you're going to be that light, you should be able to run a little bit quicker. Booker was not very quick, was one of the slower 40 times for the edge rush position. So that's going to be something to monitor. Inconsistent pass rush moves, a lack of experience, but the upside is there with him athletically. Reminds me a lot of Odafe Owe, really athletic, really raw pass rushers with limited production in college. Maybe get a little bit overdrafted for what they're worth, but I think the upside is there with Booker, and he could have a really nice NFL career if he can get into a scheme where he can develop the right way. But I've got Austin Booker at number 14. At number 13, we have Cedric Johnson from Ole Miss. Johnson and Booker are neck and neck for me. I think that Johnson is a little bit ahead of him for me because of more experience, and I think he's got more pass rush moves. It says X Greenlee. I don't know where that came from. Extremely high athletic upside with Cedric Johnson. I think his upside is very high. He was a guy that tested extremely well at the draft combine, had some of the best explosive numbers, one of the best 40s. He's got really, really good size for the position as well. I believe he's around 6'3", 260. So you absolutely love that from him. And he showcased the ability to get into that quarterback's backfield and make life difficult. The problem is when he would get into the backfield, he had really poor bend around the tackle, and he just could not seem to finish the play. He would be right there. He would get his hands on the quarterback. He could not consistently wrap up and finish the play. His production looks a lot worse on paper than it really was, because this is a guy that was really high in pressures the last couple of seasons for the Rebels, just wasn't able to finish it. Inconsistent stance as well. He's a guy that I think is going to be a 4-3 edge, can generate that power from his lower body really well. He plays high sometimes, so that's something we're going to monitor as well with him. Reminds me a little bit of Yaya Diaby, a guy that the Buccaneers took last year in the 3rd round, I believe, and he ended up having a really, really good rookie season, was in the running for Defensive Rookie of the Year. Similar size, very similar athletic scores as well, and I think their play styles are very, very similar. So I'm going to go with Yaya Diaby as my comp for Cedric Johnson, and Johnson is a guy that I think could be a really nice player at the NFL level as well. At number 12, we've got Javon Solomon. This was a guy that you guys were asking me to do a prospect profile on for a long, long time. We finally got to it just yesterday. All 15 of these guys do have a prospect spotlight on the channel, so if you want further evaluations on them, be sure to go check those videos out. But the production for Javon Solomon is some of the best in college football. I believe he had 40 hurries, 8 hits, and 17 sacks on the season for the Trojans this year. 17 sacks is absolutely absurd. This is a guy that generates a ton of power from his lower body. He has a quick first step, and he explodes off the line of scrimmage. He's got active hands and a really, really strong bend. My issue when it comes to Solomon, because I think the pass rush moves are there, the hands are there, the bend. The reason he is not higher on my list, that size is very concerning. At 6 foot, 247 pounds. 6 foot alone is very small for an edge rusher. Do you factor in the 247 pounds? It is a bit concerning. On top of that, I love how aggressive Javon Solomon plays, but sometimes I think he could be a little overly aggressive, which leads to missed tackles, which leads to him just getting off balance. There were times when he was met with a stronger offensive lineman, he was pushed off his rush, and it kind of threw him off a little bit. I think he reminds me of DeMarcus Lawrence. This was a guy that when you put it into mock draftable, the measurables are very similar. And in terms of length, Javon Solomon is bigger than DeMarcus Lawrence. On top of that, I really like the upside with Javon Solomon. I think he's a good run defender. He's a good pass rusher. That's what DeMarcus Lawrence has been for quite some time. So we're going to go with DeMarcus Lawrence as the comp. And I think Javon Solomon could be a top 100 pick. It could be very impactful at the NFL level because of that production, because he knows how to use his hands and leverage himself well. I've got him at number 12. At number 11, we've got Mohamed Kamar. Now, another guy who is a bit undersized at about 6'2", 246, but I really love this guy's athleticism. He had the second fastest 40 time for any of the edge rushers in the class. He's a guy that just loves contact. He thrives through contact, and he just continues to keep his feet churning. He's got great hand placement as well. On top of that, I think he's a good run defender. He did a really solid job of continuously setting the edge in the run game. He hits hard. You love that about Kamara. Another guy who's got inconsistent stances, plays too high at times, plays too low at times. And I think he can be too reliant on his power and just try and run guys over sometimes, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I think if we could see him be a little bit more flexible and utilize his pass rush moves, which are there, by the way, I think he could be a lot better of a player. He's at number 11. You played in the Mountain West. You're not playing the greatest competition, but he showed that elite athleticism. He showed some great potential, tested out well at the combine. He's going to be a guy who I think is going to average 6 to 8 sacks a year, very similarly to Yannick Ngakoue. Ngakoue has never been a superstar off the edge, but another guy who's a solid athlete, but but is always towards the top of the league in terms of sacks. He just knows how to get into the backfield, has a nose for the football. I think that's what Mohamed Kamar is going to be at the next level. At number 10, we have Jonah Ellis. Now, Jonah Ellis is a guy that I've seen a lot of people are a little bit higher on, and I get it, but Ellis is a guy that I think has some ups and downs. Another guy that is very quick and very powerful. We didn't get to see him test at the combine. This is a guy who gets off the line quickly, and he generates that speed into power in the blink of an eye. He's also got a number of really, really good pass rush moves. He's got long arms. Comes from a football background as well. His dad played in the NFL. Both of his brothers play in the NFL. He's a guy that I think is going to have a decent career, but he's coming off a shoulder injury. We haven't really gotten to see him in any of the pre-draft stuff. Outside of this year for Utah as well, his production has been very limited. He burst onto the scene for the Utes, but I think his production was limited. And on top of that, very slim for the position. He's got great size, great length, but he's still in that 240 range. I would like to see him bulk up a little bit. And then on top of that, just an underwhelming run defender as well. He reminds me of a light version of Lucas Van Ness, a guy who was a freak athlete, generated that speed into power. He was quick off the line of scrimmage. This is the outside linebacker version of what Lucas Van Ness was. Another comp that people were saying in my comment sections that I really like is Elvis Dumervil. Elvis Dumervil, bit undersized, but he had all of the athleticism, great pass rush moves, and ended up having over 100 career sacks for the Broncos and Ravens. I think a Dumervil and Van Ness kind of combo with just the power that Jonah Ellis plays with. When I watched the tape, it reminded me of when I watched Lucas Van Ness last year. So that's the comp I went with. Let me know what you guys think down below. But we're going to move on to my number 9 guy, which is Adisa Isaac out of Penn State. Another guy who I really like his size. He's got great length. He's got good height, good weight. He's, I believe, 6'4", 260. That's exactly kind of where you want him. But where he is going to thrive at the NFL level is his run defense. He is one of the best run defenders in the entire draft class off the edge. He sets the edge incredibly well. Seems like he is always in the backfield. This is a guy who's got solid burst and quickness. And I do apologize. Some of these typos today have been very frustrating. But he has solid hands and quickness. Solid burst, I should say, and quickness. Gets off the line quickly. Don't let the combine numbers fool you. He is a lot quicker than that on game film. But when it comes to his pass rush, he really struggles to disengage with blockers because he's got stiff hands. He just does not know how to utilize his hands and continue to kind of fight through the rush. He is not very good at changing direction. He's just very inconsistent as a pass rusher. He shows some flashes at times, but nothing on a consistent basis for him. My pro comparison is Marcus Davenport. Davenport creates pressure, not really towards the highest in terms of sacks, but he's also a very good run defender. I think Adisa Isaac is going to be a second or third round pick simply due to his run defense, and the upside is there for him as a pass rusher. And if he was a little bit more consistent, I think he could be a top 5 edge rusher in this class for me. But I do have some questions about consistency in one of the most important areas for the edge rushers. So he is my number 9 guy. At number 8, we've got Braylon Trice out of Washington. This guy has led the FBS in pressures each of the last 2 seasons. He knows how to get to the quarterback. He showcased a number of pass rush moves, which you love to see from him. This is a guy who has a swim. He has a spin. My issue with him, we know the production is there. My issue with him, change of direction is iffy. He plays very high. I think he's probably an outside linebacker at the next level. And it seems like he seems to think so as well. He came in, this was a guy who I absolutely loved his size. Loved it. He was 6'4", 270 pounds for Washington. I'm like, this guy has the size I like. And then he came into the combine at 245. That is very, very concerning for a guy that I think, like him, relies heavily on his strength. And I think we'll see what he does. I think he thinks he's strictly an outside linebacker at the next level, and his times were very concerning. We knew he wasn't the fastest guy in the world, but I don't think anyone expected him to run as slow as he did. Was one of the big combine losers. This was a guy who was a top 4 edge rusher for me before the combine, he has moved down to number 8. I think the upside, sure, it's there with him, but I think there's a lot of concerns I have. Reminds me of Bradley Chubb. Bradley Chubb isn't the fastest, has been productive, not a great change of direction guy. Very similar numbers as well in terms of size, but this was before Trice slimmed down. So now I'm not really sure. Hopefully he comes into the season bulked up and he just tried to lose the weight to run better, but it didn't help him run better. I have some concerns about Trice. Still think he's a second or third round guy, but he is my number 8 edge rusher. At number 7, we have Marshon Neal out of Western Michigan. Another guy who is got incredible size. I believe he is around that 275 mark as well. And I love his size, but we'll go straight to the cons here. It kind of puts him in a weird spot because some would say he's too big for a defensive end and too small for a defensive tackle. I think he's a very, very good 3-4 edge rusher with the outside linebackers on the outside. I think that's where he is going to thrive at the next level. That's where his size translates best. So we'll get that out of the way now. This guy, for his size, is very explosive, very quick, and he knows how to get to the quarterback. He had a really good swim move. He knows how to get into that backfield and make life more difficult for the quarterback. When it comes to his run defense, I think it could be a bit up and down. He's not a bad run defender. I still would like to see him do a better job at setting the edge. Reminds me a little bit of Broncos edge rusher Zach Allen. Very similar size, skill sets, great explosiveness for both of them. The production is there for Neal. I know he played at Western Michigan. This is a guy who I think is going to be a second-round pick. He had an excellent draft combine, and he's just a guy that continues to move up draft boards for people. I think he's going to be a really good player at the next level. I've got him at number 7. At number 6, and I know this is low for some people, I've got Chop Robinson at number 6. Now, Robinson is the best athlete in this entire draft class at the edge rusher group. He has an unbelievably high ceiling when you mix in the fact that he has some of the most elite quickness, the crackdown speed. He shows some solid moves as well. He's got elite bend around the edge. So why do I have him at number 6? Run defender, he could be up and down. I'm not too worried about that. I think he's going to be a designated pass rusher at the next level. But even as a pass rusher, there are a lot of inconsistencies with him. He struggles to really sell his move and disengage with blockers at times. And it felt like if he made contact with a blocker, it was completely over. He's a guy that loves to win with his quickness and loves to just beat the guy around the edge, which he has. He has the bend to do so. But when he meets a tackle, he really struggles to disengage and make a play. He's got very short arms. He's very raw as a prospect. And I think the inconsistencies are there. This is a guy that's going to probably be a first-round pick simply due to people are going to love the athletic upside with him. And I get it. I think he's a good player. But how good? I have some questions. I think he has bust potential because he is very raw and pretty unpolished as a prospect. That being said, I still think the upside is there. He's my number 6 edge rusher. Reminds me of Azeez Ojulari on the Giants. A bit undersized, maybe not the longest. Good pass rushers, but I think that's about it. Ojulari has been good for the Giants when he's been on the field. Cannot stay healthy. So I've got Chop Robinson at number 6. At number 5, this is the highest I've seen him. I think I'm higher on this guy than most people. I absolutely love Chris Braswell from Alabama. The production this past year was very, very good. I believe he had 13 sacks for the Crimson Tide and limited snap count. He was kind of used in a rotational role for Alabama, which kind of surprised me. But the size is there. He's got incredible size, great length, and he's got really solid burst and athleticism too. I think this is one of the better athletes in this class. I think when we look at him, though, because we see the upside is there, I think he's still a bit raw in terms of he's too reliant on his tools. He tries to win with his quickness and power more than some finesse moves. If he could add some more moves into the arsenal, I think he could be right up there with his teammate Dallas Turner. Now, he plays with high pads. The limited snap count is something I just took note of. I'm not worried about that at all. He was very productive in the snaps that they gave him. He reminds me of a Danielle Hunter type player. I really, really like Chris Braswell. I think he's going to be an awesome player at the next level. I would take him over Chop Robinson and some of these guys that are mocked a little bit ahead of him. I think he's a second round guy without a doubt, and I absolutely love him. I think he's going to be an awesome player. He's versatile, can play 3-4, can play 4-3. I've got him at number 5. At number 4, we've got Darius Robinson from Mizzou. This is a guy that I turned on the tape for him, and I was like, I really like this guy. He feels a bit unpolished. And then we saw what he did at the Senior Bowl, and he just continued to move up my board. I think he's a first-round talent. He's one of the most versatile players I think I've ever seen on the defensive line. You could play him a 3-4 edge. You could play him as a 4-3 edge. You could play him as like a defensive tackle. Like, this guy has everything you want. He's a very, very good run defender, and he's been good as rushing the passer as well. He's got great power that he plays with an extremely high motor. He's a hard hitter, but when we look at it, he's a bit of a late bloomer. Outside of this past year, I mean, you saw some upside last year when you watched Isaiah McGuire tape. You're like, this Darius Robinson guy's got a little something. I don't think we expected this from him. On top of that, balance and speed. His speed was a big concern for some people. It was a 4'8" guy, but then you look at the size. The guy came in at 286. So I'm not too worried about his speed for his position. I think he's a 3-4 edge rusher at the next level. The balance is where I have some concerns with him. He did play so aggressively. It led to him playing off balance, losing his footing, but I really, really like Darius Robinson. I think he's going to be awesome at the next level. This is a guy that is going to be a long-time starter in the NFL, I do believe. My pro comparison for him is Cameron Jordan. I think Cam Jordan has been versatile for the Saints, can play everywhere. He's powerful, and they have very, very similar size. So I'm going to go with Cam Jordan as my comp for Darius Robinson. I think Robinson is going to be a very good player in the NFL. Into my top 3, which is pretty chalk. Everyone seems to have a different order, but I think these guys are 1A, 1B. I'll say this. I think it's number 1 is my number 1 guy, and then you can swap 2A and 2B. That's kind of where I'm at here. Number 3, I've got Jared Verse, though. Verse, to me, I think the number 2 guy we'll get into in a second. I think this is the guy that I would take if I want to win right now, if I need a guy that is going to help me now. He's a freak athlete. I mean, this guy is big. He's strong. He had 33 on the bench, which is one of the best numbers. The only guy similarly close to that is Myles Garrett. Now, I don't think he's the athlete Myles Garrett is. This is a guy who can win with power. He can win with speed. He's got the pass rush moves. He's very scheme versatile, which is one of my favorite things about Jared Verse. I think he would be great as an outside linebacker or as a 4-3 edge. I really do think he could play anywhere. His run defense can be up and down, similarly to his tackling, which I think those things go hand in hand. And he plays pretty high, but I really love Jared Verse. This is a guy who has the moves. He's got the power. He's got the speed. He's got the production. He's got everything you look for, and he's got experience. That's something that my number 2 guy doesn't really have over him. And number 2, still a very raw player, I believe. But Jared Verse, I think, is going to come in and help a team right away. I think if I was going to put money on it, he would finish higher in Defensive Rookie of the Year odds than Dallas Turner, which is my number 2 player. Dallas Turner, everyone seems to love Dallas Turner, and I get it. You really love what he could be. This guy's an unbelievable athlete. He's got unbelievable length, size, speed, and he's still got raw potential that is very untapped. You can see it with him at times. Oh my gosh, how good can this guy be if he gets some really good coaching and stuff? I actually think now he's got good run defending and he can drop back into coverage a little bit. I think he is a pretty perfect outside linebacker for a 3-4. My comp is Uchenna Nwosu. Don't really pay too much attention to that. It's mostly just due to play styles. Nwosu has been a very versatile player, can play anywhere, and is a good athlete. But I think Dallas Turner is a better version of that. My issues with Dallas Turner, he's undeveloped as a pass rusher. The bend is there. You can see it. But it's just he hasn't really polished his game. He hasn't really developed a lot of these pass rush moves. He hasn't done it yet. Also, especially in 2022, it got better in 2023, but a lot of his pressures came off designed blitzes. I would like to see him, win a rep and not be kind of as a blitzer. I think Dallas Turner is going to be a good player. He's probably going to be the number one edge rusher taken off the board. But come on, this guy has what you look for, and I think he could develop into one of the best edge rushers in the league. I like him better than Chop Robinson because he's got the length, he's got more production, and I think he's more consistent. And you add in the run defense, there's a lot there to like. You could put Verse or Turner in any order for me. I think those guys are fighting for that number 2 spot. But for me, the clear number 1 is Latu Latu out of UCLA. If you guys have followed the channel for a while, you know I absolutely love this guy. The size is there for him. The length is there. The versatility is there. The coverage abilities are there. The production is there. He's got pass rush moves. He's got speed. He's got quickness. He's got power. Everything you want from an edge rusher, you've got with Latu Latu. Now, my number 1 issue, it is the injuries. He had a neck injury at Washington that forced him to medically retire. He sat out for a season, came back with UCLA, and hasn't had any issues with it. As far as we know, I think the reports and the medicals are all good, but it is still something that we have to monitor. On top of that, he played with high pads. He played with some missed tackles at time to time. I mean, that can be taught at the next level. Missed tackles were up and down. It was an issue for Verse as well, but I really, really love Latu Latu. He is my number 1 edge rusher. He reminds me of Alex Highsmith from the Pittsburgh Steelers, another guy who was a bit of an older prospect when he came in, but I think he had a lot of the tools. Took him a couple years to develop and is now one of the best pass rushers in all of football. But that's going to do it for me in this video. Let me know which edge rushers are you guys a big fan of down in the comment section below. Leave a like, subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.